There are many different types of constraints that can be created in a sketch. To create a parallel constraint, select two or more lines in the sketch and select Parallel from the Constraints menu. To create a perpendicular constraint, select two lines and select Perpendicular from the Constraints menu. Lines do not need to share a common point or intersect with each other to be made perpendicular. Guide curves are shown to indicate a perpendicularity between disconnected lines. To create a tangent constraint, select a line and a curve or two curves, and select Tangent from the Constraints menu. Tangent elements do not need to be in contact with each other. When tangent elements are separated, guide curves are shown to indicate where the tangency applies. You can make sketch endpoints coincident with other elements in your design to make them connected. To create a coincident constraint, select an endpoint and another element in your design, then select Coincident from the Constraints menu. Alternatively, you can drag an endpoint onto the element you want to connect to. To create a midpoint constraint, select an endpoint and a line. Then select Midpoint from the Constraints menu, or drag an endpoint onto the midpoint. Now, if the position of the midpoint changes, all the connected elements will follow it, and if the endpoints of the line move, they will remain symmetrical to the midpoint. To create a concentric constraint, select Arc or Circle elements and select Concentric from the Constraints menu. To create a horizontal vertical constraint, select a line, then select Horizontal Vertical from the Constraints menu. The lines will be aligned with the axis closest to their original direction. You can also apply the horizontal vertical constraint to multiple selected lines at once. If you have auto-constraining turned on, you can automatically create horizontal vertical constraints while sketching horizontal or vertical lines. To create an equal constraint, select similar elements, such as multiple lines or multiple arcs, then select Equal from the Constraints menu. Symmetrical elements lie on opposite sides of an axis of symmetry and behave as mirror images of each other. To create a symmetry constraint, select two similar elements, such as two arcs or two lines. Select Symmetry from the Constraints menu, and then select a line or an edge for the axis of symmetry. The lock constraint fixes a selected element in its current position. To use the lock constraint, select a sketch element, and then Lock from the Constraints menu. Locked sketch points are shown with a solid blue color. Alternatively, you can select the lock badge in the design space when a point is selected. To unlock a sketch element, select Unlock from the Constraints menu, or use the Unlock badge.